At 03:42 on June 4, 1942, a worn-out American codebreaker sat in a basement beneath Pearl Harbor, staring at a two-letter code that could decide the future of the Pacific, AF. He didn't know what it meant. The Japanese knew. Their carriers were already moving. If AF meant Hawaii, the war was over. If it meant Alaska, America's fleet was headed to the wrong ocean. If it meant Midway, the U.S. had 72 hours to pull off the greatest naval ambush in history. Rochefort had worked on JN-25 for 19 months, partial breaks only, 10% of intercepts readable, maybe 15% on good days. The Imperial Japanese Navy changed codebooks every 6 months, changed cipher keys every 24 hours. Mathematically, JN-25 was considered unbreakable by conventional analysis. The British had tried for 18 months at their Singapore facility before the Japanese overran the island. Their conclusion, 15 years minimum to achieve full breaks with current computational methods. Station Hypo, Rochefort's basement facility, had 37 people total. 37 people against 45,000 five-digit code groups, each substituted for a word or phrase, then encrypted again with secondary cipher additives from a book containing 100,000 random numbers. The mathematical combinations were staggering, 4.5 billion possible meanings per intercept. British codebreakers at Bletchley Park were making progress against German Enigma. The Japanese system was harder. Rochefort wasn't a typical naval officer. He wore a velvet smoking jacket and carpet slippers in the basement, against every uniform regulation in the manual. His team worked 20-hour shifts. Jazz music played constantly from a phonograph in the corner. Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman. Rochefort claimed the music helped him think, helped him see patterns in the chaos. His superiors in Washington hated everything about his operation. The informality, the direct communication with Admiral Nimitz that bypassed the chain of command, the jazz music. Most of all, they hated that his unorthodox methods were producing results when their conventional approaches had failed for 19 months. The tension between Station Hypo and Washington Naval Intelligence had been building since December 1941. It was about to explode. The intercepts mentioning AF had started appearing 3 weeks earlier. May 10th, first mention. AF requires water distillation equipment. May 12th, AF garrison strength estimated at 2,000. May 15th, AF attack force departs May 26. May 18th, carrier divisions 1 and 2 will strike AF at dawn. Every intercept added detail, but none revealed what AF actually meant. Rochefort ran the statistics. Water distillation requirements suggested a small island with no natural freshwater sources. Garrison strength of 2,000 ruled out major installations like Pearl Harbor with over 40,000 troops. The geography had to be Central Pacific, somewhere along Japan's advance route. His analysis pointed to one location: Midway Atoll. 2. Small islands, sand and eastern. Total land area, 2.4 square miles, 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii. Strategic position blocking Japanese approach to Pearl Harbor. Small marine garrison. Water supplied entirely by distillation. Everything fit except one problem. He had zero hard proof. If you like stories like this, true moments where human instinct quietly changed the course of history, consider subscribing. We're pulling these forgotten moments from classified archives every week. Real people, real decisions, real consequences. Just hit that button. Washington disagreed with everything. Admiral King, Chief of Naval Operations, was 80% certain AF meant Oahu, another strike at Pearl Harbor itself. The Japanese wanted revenge for the Doolittle raid on Tokyo, April 18th, when 16 B-25 bombers had launched from USS Hornet and struck the Japanese homeland. The psychological impact had been devastating. Emperor Hirohito's palace grounds had been bombed. The myth of Japanese invincibility had cracked. King's logic was straightforward. Japan needed a dramatic counterstrike. Pearl Harbor was the obvious target. Army Air Force intelligence had a different theory. They were 70% certain AF meant the Aleutian Islands, the chain stretching west from Alaska toward the Soviet Union. Japan needed northern bases. Separate intercepts mentioned operations against Dutch Harbor and Adak Island. The Aleutians made strategic sense for containment of Soviet Pacific forces. Split opinions, contradictory intelligence, 3 days until the attack. And Rochefort sitting in his basement with nothing but mathematical probability and a hunch based on water distillation requirements. May 19th, 1400 hours. Rochefort walked into Admiral Nimitz's office with a proposal that violated every intelligence protocol. Admiral, I need you to order Midway to broadcast a fake emergency in plain English, unencrypted. Tell them to report their water distillation plant has broken down. Fresh water shortage. Midway needs emergency supplies. Nimitz stared at him across the desk. You want to tell the enemy we're vulnerable? No, sir. I want to trick the Japanese into confirming what AF means. The room went silent. Nimitz's chief of staff thought Rochefort had lost his mind. Broadcasting vulnerabilities in plain language was insane. If Rochefort was wrong about AF, if it didn't mean Midway, the broadcast would accomplish nothing except alerting Japan that America was setting some kind of trap. If Rochefort was wrong about Japanese code security, if JN-25 wasn't actually readable at the level he claimed, the entire deception would fail, and Japan would know Station Hypo was attempting breaks. The risk was enormous. But Nimitz trusted Rochefort's mathematics. He approved the operation. May 20th, 0800 hours. Midway broadcasted in plain English on standard frequencies. Water distillation plant malfunction. Emergency supplies requested. Estimated shortage in 48 hours. The message went out unencrypted, readable to anyone listening. American submarines in the area received private briefing. Ignore the message. It's bait. Hawaiian command was confused but complied. Rochefort's team went back to the basement and waited. 24 hours passed. Nothing. 36 hours. Still nothing. Rochefort hadn't slept since the broadcast. His team was beginning to doubt. Maybe the Japanese weren't monitoring Allied communications as closely as assumed. Maybe they had detected the deception. Maybe AF didn't mean Midway after all, and the entire operation was pointless. 48 hours. Rochefort sat at his desk, smoking cigarettes, playing the same Duke Ellington record on repeat. Then, at 3:40, on May 22nd, the intercept came through. Japanese transmission, JN-25 encrypted, medium priority. Rochefort's team broke it at Aero 5:20. The message was simple. AF reports water shortage due to distillation plant failure. The room went absolutely silent. Someone dropped a pencil. The sound echoed in the basement. AF equals Midway. Confirmed. Not 95% probability. Not mathematical likelihood. Absolute certainty. The Japanese had intercepted Midway's plain language broadcast, believed it was genuine, encrypted it into JN-25, and transmitted it to their fleet. Rochefort had just tricked the Imperial Japanese Navy into confirming their primary target using their own unbreakable code. The deception was perfect. One fake emergency broadcast, one weather report, 27 minutes of creative thinking. And now America knew exactly where Japan's entire carrier fleet was heading, but Washington still didn't believe him. Admiral King's response came through on May 23rd. Interesting deception, but insufficient proof. The message could be Japanese counter-deception. They might have detected our trick and are feeding false information to draw our carriers into a trap. Army intelligence agreed. Recommend splitting carrier force between Alaska and Hawaii. Cover both possibilities. Don't commit everything to Rochefort's theory. The institutional resistance was massive. Rochefort had embarrassed Washington for 19 months by producing better intelligence from a basement in Hawaii than the entire naval intelligence apparatus in D.C. was generating, with 10 times the personnel and 100 times the budget. If he was right about Midway, their humiliation would be complete. If he was wrong, they could finally discredit him and shut down his unorthodox operation. Politics was fighting mathematics. Admiral Nimitz ignored Washington completely. He believed Rochefort's numbers. He ordered all 3 carriers to position northeast of Midway, exactly where Rochefort's intercepts indicated Japanese scout planes wouldn't search. Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown. Every carrier America had left in the Pacific. Total commitment based on one man's analysis. But Yorktown wasn't ready. She had taken torpedo damage at the Battle of Coral Sea 2 weeks earlier. 3 boiler rooms flooded. Flight deck cracked in 2 places. Structural damage to the hull. Normal repair estimate, 90 days at Bremerton Naval Yard in Washington State. Rochefort's intelligence said the battle would happen June 4th. That gave Pearl Harbor Navy Yard 72 hours. The base commander said they would try. 1,400 workers descended on Yorktown on May 27th. Welding, cutting, pumping, patching, 24-hour shifts, sparks flying day and night. May 29th, 1100 hours, Yorktown departed Pearl Harbor with repair crews still aboard, working while she sailed toward Midway. Watertight integrity was 60% of normal. Combat capability was questionable. But she was moving. 3 carriers against 6, possibly 8. Except the Japanese didn't know the Americans were coming. Rochefort's partial JN-25 brakes had provided more than just the target. He had the Japanese order of battle. 4 fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. 2 light carriers in support. 11 battleships. 16 cruisers. 46 destroyers. The attack date, June 4th. Attack time, dawn, between 0430 and 600 local. Approach vector, northwest. First airstrike composition, 108 aircraft. And critically, the Japanese scout plane search pattern with a gap in grid square 12. That gap was everything. Admiral Nagumo's scout planes would search in a fan pattern radiating from the carrier force. Sector 1 through Sector 11, complete coverage. Sector 12 had reduced coverage due to mechanical limitations on the float plane assigned to that sector. The aircraft launched late on every mission. Rochefort knew this from previous intercepts. He told Nimitz to position American carriers in the gap. The Japanese wouldn't see them until it was too late. If you want to see how a math teacher's trick turned into the greatest naval ambush in history, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because what happens in the next 4 minutes is absolutely insane. June 4th, 0430 hours. Japanese carriers launched 108 aircraft toward Midway. Dive bombers, torpedo bombers, fighters. The strike departed on schedule. But Scout Plane Number 4, the aircraft assigned to search grid square 12, had a mechanical problem. Catapult malfunction. The plane launched 30 minutes late. That 30-minute delay meant it would search the critical sector after the American carriers had already launched their strike. Everything was coming together exactly as Rochefort's mathematics had predicted. At 0520, Midway's radar detected incoming aircraft at 93 miles. Every American plane on the island launched immediately. Marine fighters, obsolete Brewster Buffaloes, a few Wildcats, B-17 bombers, torpedo bombers, outdated equipment, outmatched pilots. Their job wasn't to win the air battle. Their job was to damage Japanese aircraft and force Nagumo to launch a second strike, keeping his carriers busy rearming planes when American carriers attacked. The Marine fighters intercepted the Japanese formation at 0600. 17 Marine aircraft were shot down in 12 minutes. Japanese losses, 6 aircraft. The slaughter was one-sided and deliberate. But Midway's runways were damaged, not destroyed. The Japanese strike leader radioed back to Nagumo at 0700, "Second strike necessary." That message changed everything. Nagumo's carriers had aircraft on deck, armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs for anti-ship attack in case American carriers appeared. The Midway strike leader's message meant those anti-ship weapons needed to be swapped for land attack bombs for a second strike on the island. Nagumo gave the order at 07:55, rearm all aircraft with land attack ordnance. Mechanics swarmed the hangar decks. They started removing torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs, stacking them on the deck because there was no time to return them to the magazines below. Simultaneously, they were bringing up land attack bombs and attaching them to aircraft. Aviation fuel hoses snaked everywhere. Organized chaos. Then, at 07:28, Japanese scout plane number 4, the late one, finally reached grid square 12. The message came through instantly. Sight what appears to be 10 enemy surface ships, bearing Rero 10 degrees, distance 240 miles from Midway. Nagumo's staff froze. American ships weren't supposed to be there. Intelligence had said American carriers were near the Solomon Islands, 2,000 miles away. The scout plane sent a follow-up at 08:09. Enemy force accompanied by what appears to be a carrier. Admiral Nagumo had 60 seconds to make a decision. The Midway strike force was returning, low on fuel, circling overhead waiting to land. The hangar decks were full of aircraft in the middle of rearming, land attack bombs stacked everywhere, torpedoes scattered on the deck, fuel hoses connected, and now an American carrier 200 miles away. Nagumo gave new orders at 08:15, stop rearming, prepare to repel enemy carriers, rearm all aircraft with anti-ship torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. The mechanics reversed everything. Remove the land attack bombs they had just installed. Bring the torpedoes back up from where they had just been stored. The hangar decks descended into chaos. Ordnance everywhere, fuel everywhere, and the Midway strike force still overhead, running out of fuel, needing to land immediately. Nagumo ordered them to land, starting at 08:30. While they were landing and refueling, 3 American torpedo squadrons arrived. Torpedo Squadron 8 from Hornet, 15 obsolete Douglas Devastator torpedo bombers, slow, poorly armored, carrying torpedoes that frequently malfunctioned. No fighter escort. The fighters had gotten separated during the approach. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron led his squadron straight at the Japanese carriers at 09:18. Japanese fighters swarmed them. Zeros diving from 12,000 feet, cannon fire ripping through the Devastators. All 15 aircraft were shot down in 11 minutes. 29 men killed. 1 survivor, Ensign George Gay, floating in the water watching what happened next. Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise attacked at 09:40. 14 aircraft, 4 survived. No torpedo. Hits. Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown attacked at 09:55. 12 aircraft, 2 survived. No hits. In 40 minutes, 35 American torpedo bombers attacked Japanese carriers. 41 aircrews died. 0 successful hits. Complete failure. Except it wasn't a failure at all. The torpedo attacks had accomplished exactly what they needed to. Japanese carriers were maneuvering radically to avoid torpedoes. Fighter Combat Air Patrol had been pulled down to sea level, chasing the slow American bombers. The hangar decks were still open with ordnance and fuel scattered everywhere from the rearming chaos. And nobody was looking up. At 14,000 feet, 33 Douglas Dauntless dive bombers from Enterprise were lost. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey had led his squadron to where the Japanese carriers were supposed to be. Empty ocean. He was about to turn back when he spotted a Japanese destroyer heading northeast at high speed. He followed the wake. At 09:22, McCluskey saw them. Kaga, Akagi, and Soryu in tight formation. Hangar decks open. aircraft being refueled and rearmed, bombs and torpedoes stacked on deck, fuel hoses connected, fighter cover at sea level, perfect geometry. McCluskey's dive bombers rolled into their attack dives at 0924. The Japanese didn't see them until bombs were already falling. The first bomb hit Kaga's flight deck at 0926, penetrated to the hangar deck, detonated among the stacked ordnance. Secondary explosions began immediately. 3 more bombs hit Kaga in the next 90 seconds. Aviation fuel ignited. Torpedo warheads started cooking off in the 800-degree heat. At 0928, Akagi was hit by 1 bomb, possibly 2. The bomb pierced the flight deck amidships and exploded in the upper hangar among aircraft being refueled. Fuel vapor ignited instantly. Admiral Nagumo evacuated to a cruiser. At 0929, Yorktown's dive bombers hit Soryu with 3 bombs. Same result. Hangar deck inferno. Soryu's aviation fuel storage ruptured. By 0930, 3 Japanese fleet carriers were burning uncontrollably. 4 minutes, 0926 to 0930. 4 minutes that changed the entire Pacific War. Kaga sank at 1925 on June 4th. Akagi was scuttled by Japanese destroyers at 0500 on June 5th. Soryu sank at 1915 on June 4th. The 4th carrier, Hiryu, launched a counterattack that crippled Yorktown, but Enterprise's dive bombers found Hiryu at 1700 and left her burning. She was scuttled at 0900 on June 5th. Japan lost 4 fleet carriers, 2,500 aircrew killed, including most of their experienced pilots. America lost Yorktown and destroyer Hammond, 307 men total. Every single prediction Rochefort had made was correct. Date, time, location, force composition, approach vector, Japanese battle plan. All correct. Nimitz's after-action report stated it clearly. Midway victory was essentially a victory of intelligence. The success of cryptanalysis. Washington's response came in August 1942. Admiral King reassigned Rochefort, not promoted. Reassigned to command a floating dry dock in San Francisco. Administrative duties. No more code breaking. The official reason was that Rochefort had bypassed chain of command by reporting directly to Nimitz. His methods were unorthodox. He was difficult to work with. Translation: he had been right when Washington was wrong, and they couldn't forgive him for it. In October 1942, the Navy Department recommended Rochefort for the Distinguished Service Medal. Admiral King personally rejected it. He was recommended again in 1943. Rejected again. The man who had won the Battle of Midway spent 1943 through 1945 commanding a floating dry dock, never received his medal during the war, retired in 1947 as a captain, and worked as a building contractor in Los Angeles until his death in 1976. In 1985, President Ronald Reagan awarded Joseph Rochefort the Distinguished Service Medal, posthumously, 43 years late. His widow accepted it. The mathematics are simple. If Rochefort had been wrong about AF, American carriers would have been sent to the wrong location. Japan would have taken Midway unopposed, established a base 1,300 miles from Hawaii, launched a second strike on Pearl Harbor with land-based bombers from Midway, and made Hawaiian invasion viable. Casualty estimates if Midway had been lost: 500,000 to 1 million additional military deaths from an extended Pacific War, incalculable civilian casualties from potential West Coast operations, and a war extended by 2 to 4 years. What actually happened? Japan went permanently on defensive after June 4th. Guadalcanal invasion became possible in August 1942. Island-hopping campaign succeeded because Japan lacked carrier superiority. War ended August 1945. The man who made that possible received official recognition 9 years after his death, no posthumous promotion, no wartime medal, and spent his final years as a building contractor. Today, Station Hypo's basement at Pearl Harbor is a parking lot, demolished in 1975. Rochefort's IBM tabulating machines were scrapped in 1946. The unbreakable JN25 cipher was declassified in 1996, 54 years after Midway. His personnel file still contains Admiral King's rejection of his Distinguished Service Medal, preserved in the National Archives. The National Security Agency teaches Rochefort's analytical methods as standard curriculum, teaches his interagency bypass tactics as a case study in how not to handle Washington politics, and teaches the AF water trick as the perfect example of confirmation deception. But his name appears nowhere at the Midway Memorial in Hawaii, in most World War II documentary films, or in high school history textbooks. If this story made you as angry as it made us, do something about it. Hit that like button. Every single like tells the algorithm to show Joseph Rochefort's story to more people who need to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing these forgotten moments from classified files every week. Stories about people who trusted mathematics over politics, instinct over bureaucracy, truth over career safety. Drop a comment right now. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us if you knew about the AF trick before this video. Tell us if someone in your family broke codes or fought at Midway. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Joseph Rochefort, the man who won the Pacific War in 27 minutes from a basement wearing a smoking jacket and carpet slippers, doesn't disappear into the silence Washington wanted for him. These people deserve better than parking lots and posthumous medals 40 years too late. You're helping make sure they get it.